These are our neighbors, these are our family members, and these are Oklahomans who have fallen on hard times or just had that intersection of a lot of things failing them and going wrong. As a community, we have more momentum than we ever have in really making some significant impact in addressing this issue. It's going to take all of us, but it's important that people understand we know what works, we know what to do. Progress takes time. And we are seeing that progress happen. It's going to take a little bit of time and a lot of resources and the community really coming together.
Welcome to the Community Center from Oringo Urbanism, a show about bringing people together to provide dignity and resources to those who need them the most. I'm Kyler. I'll be your host for today. I'm an architect and design communicator based out of Oklahoma City. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest who will be helping us to answer the question, what is being done to help address homelessness in Oklahoma City? Erika Warren, welcome to the show. Could you start us out by telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, and thank you for having me. Excited to be here. I am Erika Warren. I work on the Key to Home management team for the Key to Home partnership. Key to Home serves as the lead agency for our community's homeless response system. So our network of over 50 organizations who are coming together every day, working to address homelessness in Oklahoma City. My team is embedded at the City of Oklahoma City. My role specifically is communications, public relations, and marketing. So I do a lot of presentations and kind of interfacing with the community and Oklahoma City residents, doing public education and things like that. My team as a whole, embedded at the city, our job is really operating at that system level. We don't provide any direct services. We sort of coordinate efforts across the partnership. So we work with all of those 50 agencies to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction. We're coordinating our efforts, working towards shared goals, making sure that system as a whole is constantly improving our performance, and not only for the people that we're serving, reducing homelessness in Oklahoma City, but we also want to make sure that from a compliance perspective, we're really meeting those requirements so that we can increase our allocation from the federal government. And we do receive the dollars from the Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level. And then our team works to re-grant those dollars back out into our community to those direct service agencies doing the boots on the ground work. And again, as that lead agency, our job is monitoring our performance, making sure we're looking at data. Everything we do is data informed, making sure we have strategy. Our partnership and direct service agencies are all providing input. We're collaborating on developing and designing that strategy. And then we're just kind of working as those project managers that are helping drive progress and make sure we're all moving in the same direction.
That's great. Yeah. So what is your own personal background and how did you get interested in this kind of work?
Yeah, my career is primarily in philanthropy. So I've worked at several grant-making foundations, community foundations. So I've worked with and alongside a lot of the nonprofit service providers, both in homeless services and kind of across the board in Oklahoma City and across the state in various roles throughout my career. Working at one of those foundations, I was offered an opportunity to serve on the board for Key to Home before it was really restructured as the Key to Home partnership. It was just a citizens advisory board of 6 or 8 people, and we came together really like once a year to help review the applications that were submitted for that re-granting of those federal dollars that I talked about. And so I served on that board for almost 10 years. And right when that board was really like restructuring and re-envisioning how we wanted to address homelessness in Oklahoma City, and kind of reimagining that and restructuring into the Key to Home partnership, The opportunity to serve as staff on the management team became available, and that was a really natural fit for me. I've always been interested and really passionate about the issue of homelessness. And so, yeah, getting to work on the management team and really be a part of this kind of transformation of how our community is addressing this really significant challenge was really exciting and something I wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what are some of the misconceptions that people have about homelessness, and what are some of the things that you encounter often where people are not understanding the issue?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest and most persistent sort of myths that I hear is that people are experiencing homelessness because they are just either choosing to, and because they don't want to participate in society, or they want to kind of operate by their own rules. And the data just doesn't like it, it's just not true. I think the other side of that coin and the other piece of that is often that it's just a matter of personal failure. And again, time and time again, we see that that isn't accurate. When you talk about the opportunity for people to transition out of homelessness and that myth that people just want to live outside or they're just choosing that lifestyle, I look to the data. So one of the kind of flagship interventions that the Key to Home Partnership rolled out when we really restructured in 2023 was the Encampment Rehousing Initiative. And so this is a newer pathway to housing for our community. Again, it launched in 2023 and it set a goal to rehouse 500 people by the end of 2025. So that program is multidisciplinary, from teams working across several different agencies in our community, from teams doing outreach, street outreach work, case management, landlord engagement. And the goal is when we identify an encampment for closure, those teams are working to build trust and rapport, to understand the circumstances of the folks who are living in that encampment. And we make an offer of housing and supportive services to everyone residing in that encampment. And once people have moved into housing, we close that site and monitor it so that it doesn't repopulate. We exceeded that goal of 500 people by the end of 2025, closed 30 encampments in that time frame, and 93% of people who were offered housing and support accepted it. So again, the data just doesn't support that people want to be living outside or that they're choosing to be homeless. And when you talk about kind of the causes of homelessness, it's another big misconception. It's never one thing. It's never just a singular event. It's almost always the intersection of many different things failing or going wrong in someone's life, whether that is, on a more micro level or a macro, like systemic level. When you think about affordable housing or stagnant wages or the cost of healthcare, it's often many different things that are compounding that are leading to someone experiencing homelessness.
Right. Yeah. So, with something like the encampment rehousing program, how do you all kind of track and ensure that those people stay in housing after that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. So through encampment rehousing, folks have 12 months of subsidy. So they have 12 months of housing paired with a case management support. So over those 12 months, that case manager is helping that person kind of re-stabilize and build that support network. So when something does go wrong, they have other folks that they can turn to, rebuilding some of those life skills and understanding some of the nuances of apartment life, like how to make a maintenance request, and just reconnecting folks back into community to help them stabilize for long-term success. We measure a few metrics with encampment rehousing, and one of those is a return to homelessness. So we measure that by a person touching the homeless response system again. So if they have a touch with street outreach, or if they're staying at an overnight shelter after they've moved into that like independent living, after they've exited the program and no longer have those supports, if we see them touch back to the system, that indicates to us that they're likely experiencing homelessness again. And so that would count as a return. We are still refining our quarter 1 numbers, but over that 2-year period where we were kind of driving to that 500, we had about an 18% return rate. National benchmark is about 15%. So that's our goal, is to be below 15%. And so we were a little bit high. I do believe the data has gone down since then, but we're still, like I said, finalizing those Q1 numbers. But that is something that we're tracking because long-term success is the goal. And we never want to, go into a situation like an encampment, move someone into housing and then walk away. Housing is really just the first step. Every intervention and strategy that we're implementing is with an eye toward long-term stability and success for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine that data collection process is like a very important piece of what you guys do. Do you know off the top of your head how many people are experiencing homelessness in OKC today? And maybe also what that number means? Like, is it people who completely have nowhere to live, or is there any inclusion of people who are living kind of from couch to couch or that kind of thing?
Yeah. So you might be familiar with the annual point in time count. Does that sound familiar at all? Yeah. So every year we do what's called the point in time count, and it's a literal census of people who are experiencing homelessness. So we recruit a couple hundred volunteers who go out at 3 a.m. on one night in January. And we deploy those volunteers where there are known locations of people sleeping outside. And so we're counting and we're giving a survey to every single person. And then we're pairing that count with data from our shelters or people who are sheltered, sleeping inside, but experiencing homelessness to give us kind of a total count. Now, that point in time number is going to be a count of people who are experiencing literal homelessness by HUD's definition. So that will not count people who are couch surfing or who are at imminent risk of homelessness or experiencing housing instability of any kind. And so we know that that number is not an all-inclusive number of every person experiencing homelessness in our community. We know it's not a perfect number, but it is something that we're very intentional about every year, ensuring that we keep our methodology very consistent so that it is giving us an accurate representation that we can look at year to year to give us some good trend line that we can rely on as one data point. We're not wrapping all of our strategy around this one singular data point, but it is part of the data that helps inform our strategy and understand how homelessness is affecting specific populations. That said, we also do system modeling. So we're kind of taking that shared database with data being input by all of our service partners to kind of get a broader picture that's not so narrowly focused. That tells us somewhere roughly around 5,000 people are coming into the homeless response system every year. So when you think about last year's point in time number, we're still finalizing our 2026 numbers, and we'll announce those at our State of Homelessness address May 7th. But until we have those numbers finalized and public, we're still using our 2025 point in time count, which was about 1,800 people.
And how does that compare to 2024, 2023?
Yeah. So 2024 to 2025 was about a 2% increase. We never want to see an increase, obviously. Our goal is to reduce homelessness. But when you look at that 2% increase, it's a relatively flat number. It's a big win for our community, especially when you consider the 2023 to 2024 number was a 28% increase. And that was something that was pretty consistent. Like most communities across the country, we're seeing increases. So for us to significantly slow that growth rate was a huge win. And when you kind of pair that with the knowledge that, roughly 5,000 people are coming into our system on an annual basis, that means that our service providers are housing about that same number of people. And so that's an incredible testament to the strength and expertise and dedication of our service partners.
So it seems like there's always a bit of an increase, but the smaller you can get that, the better. Is that kind of, have we ever seen a decrease during a year, I guess, recently?
Yes.
Um, is my question.
The last time we saw a decrease was 2022. And if you look at trend lines with point in time count, since we kind of, like I said, have that like consistent data point from year to year, it's pretty clear when we achieve reductions in homelessness, it's because we had a significant influx of resources available to us. So if you look at big national points in time, like the housing crisis, 2008, 2009, there was a decline in homelessness. COVID, we had a huge influx of COVID relief dollars. We saw a decrease in 2022. And that 28% increase, a lot of that is a reflection of those one-time dollars that we had this like huge influx of drying up and expiring. And so we see that big increase again once those dollars run out. It's also paints a similar picture when you look at things like Encampment Rehousing Initiative. It was a very dedicated, intentional, strategic effort that we were able to allocate some of the very tail end of those COVID relief dollars, paired that with some public funding from the city as well as some private investment from philanthropy. We housed 500 people over that 2-year period. We saw a 43% decrease in the target population. So it's evident that when you have strategy, when you have dedicated resources and strategic interventions, you can really move the needle.
Yeah, it sounds like you already mentioned that a misconception that people have is that it's a personal failing of the people, but I would say that that is evidence to the contrary of that, where when these systems are set up in a way that it helps address the issue, then it works. People are willing to go along with it and actually get the help they need. So
Yeah,
that's interesting.
absolutely.
So Key to Home, as I kind of understand it from how you've described it, is like a main organizing force behind addressing homelessness in OKC. And so you guys work with a lot of partner organizations. And I imagine that would be pretty much anyone in the city that's working on homelessness has some connection with you guys. So what are some of those other organizations? How do they kind of fold into what you guys are doing? And what are some of those services that are available here in OKC?
Yeah. You're right. Most organizations or agencies working to address homelessness, we have some connection to in some way. Certainly, some organizations we're working more closely with and more frequently with, specifically for some of those targeted interventions that we've worked with those service partners to roll out. So things like the Encampment Rehousing Initiative, that takes teams from across our partnership, like I said earlier, from street outreach, embedded at Mental Health Association. We have case management teams, landlord engagement teams. Those are embedded from Catholic Charities, City Rescue Mission, the Homeless Alliance. We work with City Care on a number of different efforts and initiatives. So those are some of the like larger agencies that we work with on a more frequent basis. At the end of 2025, we piloted a new intervention, early intervention is what it's called, sometimes known as diversion. This is something we're working really closely with Catholic Charities on. They have case managers embedded at several of the shelters across the city, and the goal of early intervention or diversion is to kind of move upstream. So if you think of the homeless response system as a funnel, our homeless response system has been just like a traditional funnel for a number of years, where we have this really wide opening at the top, catching a lot of people, but we have a really narrow exit at the bottom. So while a lot of people are able to come into the system, not as many are moving out of the system. We also saw a population of people who were growing and kind of stuck in that funnel, people who were experiencing long-term chronic homelessness. We know the longer someone experiences homelessness, the more barriers build up for that person, the harder it is for them to transition out. And so a lot of our strategy kind of ties back to that funnel analogy. We launched the Encampment Rehousing Initiative as kind of a flagship initiative in 2023 with the restructure and rebrand to Kita Home, specifically to address that population of people who were unsheltered and experiencing long-term homelessness. That intervention was directly targeted to that population because we knew we needed to address that in order to create some flow in our system. Early intervention is kind of targeted to the top of that funnel. So we know we've got this wide opening at the top that's catching a lot of people, and we've got to be able to reduce the number of people who are flowing into our system every year. We know people are very resilient. So something like around 40% of people who are coming into the homeless response system are able to self-resolve with a very light touch. So some short-term case management to help problem solve. I don't know about you, but when I'm in crisis, I'm not always thinking as clearly as I might be otherwise. So having a thought partner to think through some like crisis resolution, housing problem solving, and then it also allows for a one-time financial assistance payment to bridge gaps. You think about the person who lost their job, was evicted, has since got a new job, but they're sleeping in their car because they exhausted their savings and now they can't afford the deposit and the first month's rent, just like getting back into housing. So if we can help like close some of those one-time financial gaps for people who already have some level of support or income and they just need a little bit of help to get back on their feet, and then they're fine and they're ready to go and are going to sustain long term. And a lot of people experiencing homelessness are in that boat. And so if we can kind of help divert people at the front door of the homeless response system so that fewer people are coming in, and we can dedicate those shelter beds and those resources to people with higher needs, we're going to be able to really move the needle in the long term. And so our long-term goal is flipping that funnel upside down, like inverting that so that fewer people are coming in and we have many more exits and an efficient pathway out of the system.
Yeah, so I imagine it's a very different situation for each person that interfaces with this system a little bit. But what are some of the typical ways that people get integrated? Is it that point in time count, or how do people even find out that these services exist?
Yeah, sometimes it's the point in time count. A lot of times it's our street outreach teams. And so their job every single day is just going out in the community and engaging with folks who are outside and getting them connected to resources, making sure they know what resources are available and what help they're eligible for. Our emergency shelters are kind of our front door to the homeless response system. So going to an emergency like overnight shelter or a day shelter, letting staff there know that you're experiencing homelessness, that you want to do a housing assessment, and is kind of the first step to getting on that pathway into housing. Folks can also call 211. So 211 is a really incredible resource that can help connect people to not only homeless services, but just so many other resources in our community. But you can also do a housing assessment through 211 too. So if you are experiencing homelessness, you can call 211 and let them know that you want to do that assessment so you can get on the list for housing. And then there's also the city's Action Center. This is a resource both for residents of Oklahoma City for a number of city resources. So it's the same place where you would go if you saw a pothole that needed filled or a code enforcement situation. There's also a category for homeless services. So not only if a resident sees somebody experiencing homelessness who needs connection to help, they can report it through the Action Center and an outreach team will go out to that location and engage with that person. But also somebody who is experiencing homelessness, particularly unsheltered homelessness. So if they're sleeping outside or sleeping in their car and needing help, they can self-report through the Action Center, and that outreach team embedded with Mental Health Association will come out to their location and make sure they get them connected to those resources that are available to them. So our goal is to have many, many pathways into the system so that there's no wrong door approach. And then the goal is building out enough pathways and interventions to kind of meet the need. No matter what your circumstances are, you have a streamlined, efficient pathway back out of the system.
In terms of when people leave the system, what are the most common types of housing that they end up in? Is it a lot of times public housing, or is it rent supported, private? What are the mechanisms to get that housing that can be affordable to somebody who is lacking in resources?
Yeah. So it kind of depends. And there's a number of different programs and options for people, both publicly funded, privately funded. The goal for, again, this partnership of many, many agencies working together and collaborating, our goal is to have shared inventory pool of housing so that your experience isn't going to differ greatly depending on which agency you go to for services. So we have what's called coordinated entry. So it's basically housing inventory across a number of agencies across the city, one kind of entry point so that we can pair across that entire inventory and match people up with the housing program that they're eligible for and that best suits their needs. Some housing programs are going to be 12 or 24 months of housing subsidy, and that's going to differ depending on the funding source, whether that's federal or privately funded or a combination of both. There's permanent supportive housing for people with higher, more complex needs, which is a non-time limited subsidy paired with supportive services. And some of those housing programs are going to be more short-term, like a transitional housing. Those work really great for youth who are transitioning into adulthood, who need a little bit of support but don't need really long-term or like a permanent subsidy. And some of those programs, they all differ. So you might have one that is 12 months of fully paid subsidy, fully paid rent. You might have some that are more of a tiered approach. So working with that client to build up their income. And as they're able to build their income, the subsidy will decrease over time and their portion will increase until they're able to be fully independent and pay that bill themselves. So it depends. There's a lot of different housing programs and a lot of variation. Again, I think you said it earlier, every person kind of has their own unique set of circumstances. And so having a lot of different option to meet those needs is important.
One thing that I've heard people say before is that a lot of the homeless people in our city are not originally from here, or they've come in from out of town or something like that. Do you find that to be true, or are the people who are experiencing homelessness here actually like from here usually?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's another big misconception that we hear a lot. I think it is really easy and sometimes like enticing to want to think that like this isn't a problem rooted here. This is another community's problem. They're just sending it here. And if we can just send it back, it'll be solved. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. And we do ask in that point in time survey where people became homeless. 87% of people become homeless in Oklahoma. These are our neighbors. These are our family members. And these are Oklahomans who have fallen on hard times or just had that intersection of a lot of things failing them and going wrong. So, yeah, the data doesn't support it and it's just not accurate.
Yeah. I feel like you and everybody you work with have experienced these very large, kind of heavy issues all the time. How do you guys keep morale up so that you can keep doing what you need to do? Like, especially when there's a year where there's a big rise in homelessness or something, like how do you keep that from affecting you?
Yeah, great question. I don't know that we've 100% cracked that, but we do have a lot of things that we try and integrate just to day kind of keep spirits up. And anyone who is in this work is doing it because they care deeply. And Yeah, I think oftentimes we do have a little bit higher tolerance because we care so deeply, and so we can like push ourselves, but we do have to remind ourselves that um, we have to have that balance so that we can continue to do the work. So our team specifically, we try and integrate as many like morale boosting like team activities as we can. And we also try and extend that to our partnership where we can. Celebrating small wins is something that's really important with an issue that's as complex as homelessness. Success is not always linear. So you have to celebrate those small wins, and progress isn't immediate. So you have to be really patient, and day to day you just have to be able to focus on small wins. So sometimes that looks like we did what we call the kudos corner, where staff were able to like recognize each other and like nominate each other. We'll do small fundraisers for like gift cards and things. So if you were nominated in the kudos corner, you got entered to win various prizes. We do a lot of staff events, whether it's just like going to trivia night or going on walks, just like building in time where you can kind of step away from the work and celebrate those small wins, celebrate each other, recognize each other are all really, really important. We try and dedicate some intentional time and opportunities for those things as much as we can.
Yeah, that's good. What are some of the big takeaways you'd like people to take away from this? Or what are some of the things that would give people a better understanding of the situation and how we can be a part of the solution?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway and what I really want people to understand is as a community, we have more momentum than we ever have in really making some significant impact in addressing this issue. We're collaborating more, we're coordinating efforts more than ever before. The city is very committed and dedicated to seeing this through. And I think it's important for the broader community to understand that there is very, very intentional and dedicated strategy that is data driven, that is evidence based. We are constantly iterating continuous quality improvement, looking to peer cities, what's working, what's not working, what can we implement here. No one's interested in reinventing the wheel if we don't have to. And I just think it's important that people understand we launched 2 years ago with this kind of restructured approach to homelessness in Oklahoma City. We have made some significant progress. We've been able to move the needle where we have strategic interventions and dedicated resources. We know what works. We know what we need to do. We're not throwing spaghetti at the wall. We have some very intentional strategy, and it's going to take the entire community. If one organization or faith group or nonprofit agency could do it alone, we would have seen that evidence either here or in another community. And unfortunately, the issue is just too complex. So it's going to take all of us, whether that's volunteering your time at a service partner, donating money, sending a ticket through the Action Center because you see someone in need who needs help. It's going to take all of us, but it's important that people understand we know what works, we know what to do. Progress takes time. And we are seeing that progress happen. It's going to take a little bit of time and a lot of resources and the community really coming together. I think watching our nonprofit service partners, our direct service providers coming together has been really inspiring. They are the most dedicated people you'll ever meet, and they work incredibly hard every single day. Watching the way that they've been able to collaborate, come up with creative solutions, meet people where they are, and really move the needle has been really inspiring. And so I think the broader community just understanding that there is a plan and some real strategy at play here and just showing up where they can to support those efforts is wonderful.
If somebody does want to donate time or money, or if they just want to stay up to date with what you guys are doing, how can people do that?
Yeah. So Kita Home itself has a website, kitahomeokc.org. And so you can kind of keep up with strategy and what's going on from that system level perspective. We are a public-private partnership, so you can donate to Kita Home's efforts. We have a fund at Communities Foundation of Oklahoma. It's a flexible fund, so we can receive those private donations. Those are most often used for either those financial payments to kind of close those gaps for people who just need a little bit of assistance to get back on their feet, or helping to remove barriers for people to access housing. Federal dollars will pay for things like a subsidy, so they'll help cover your rent, but they won't pay for things like a deposit, a risk fee, a pet deposit. So often there's a lot of barriers up front to even being able to utilize that subsidy. So those private funds help fill those gaps where public dollars just can't. If you want to volunteer your time or your money, please support all of our partner agencies. You can see a full list of our partner agencies on the Kita Home website. We also link to their website, so if you want to learn more about them or opportunities to get involved with any of them, I would encourage them to do that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Erika, so much for coming and sharing with us. And yeah, I look forward to seeing homelessness not be a problem anymore one day.
Me too. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks for the thoughtful questions and the interest in the work that we're doing. We appreciate it.
Hey, it's me, Kyler. If you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to give the show a like, rating, subscription, or whatever kind of nice feedback you can provide on whatever platform you're watching or listening from. If you'd like to join our community to stay up to date or to discuss anything you heard in today's show, consider joining the Erika Urbanism Discord server. And finally, if you'd like to support the work of Erika Urbanism directly, you can do so over on Patreon. Until next time.